Mr. Chris Chan, and Mr. Boris Chitombo. They will share industry thinking about current and emerging technology solutions to the challenges of these unprecedented times. Allow me now to hand over the proceedings to Ms. Ng Xiu Min, Head of the School of Information and Communications Technology. Xiu Min will be moderating the session. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Sumitra, Mr. Chris Chan, and Mr. Boris. Our first speaker will be Dr. Sumitra from MDEC, who will share with us the importance of developing digital talent, even during and because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Over to you, Dr. Sumi.
Thank you, Shumin and Dr. Sien. Good afternoon to Datuk Paul. I believe he was here. I'm not sure if he's still in the call, but if you are, Datuk, pleasure to join you for the session today. And thank you for the invitation to join the webinar. Yeah? So let me just share my slides. Just give me a minute. Oops. Hold on a second. Just give me a minute. Hold on. Okay, can you see my slides?
Not yet.
It's on now. I've already shared it.
Yes.
Okay, great. Wonderful. So good afternoon, everyone. So the topic today, I understand, is about systems thinking and related to IT and what the world is currently going through. So allow me to share very briefly. I think I have about 15 minutes, so let me share. So I think, I'm sure we all know what are all these logos, right? So, like today we are on the MS Teams, Microsoft Teams. I'm sure we all know Zoom, Meetup, Skype, and I'm not sure if anybody knows the one on the right. Boris may be more familiar with this, or maybe the younger generation. Anybody knows, if you know what this is, you can put it in the chat later, right? So these are all different social media platforms. And what's interesting about these social media platforms in the last few weeks is that you'll actually see that they were formed many years ago, like Skype 2003, Zoom 2011, and so on. But during COVID-19, we'll actually see that you'll see the data down there. And we've seen tremendous growth in the use of these social media and online meeting applications. Yeah, and it's across the board. I mean, I think everybody is using all kinds of social media platforms and across the world. It's not limited to Malaysia. This is something that we're seeing across the world. And so suddenly we find that, from MDEC is the Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation. And for years, we have been advocating and evangelizing the need for people to go digital, the need for education to go digital, the need for businesses to go digital. And yet, it was taking a long time. But today, suddenly, everybody is digital by default. And so there is this, this image that's floating around social media. I'm sure many of us have seen it, that what we're facing today is undoubtedly accelerating our digital transformation or our adoption of digital tools, right? So anecdotally, who leads the digital transformation in your company? Even up to maybe 5-6 months ago, we were all talking about, oh yes, how important leadership is, CEO, CTO, so on and so forth. But today, suddenly, whether the CEO or CTO likes it, COVID is upon us and we have no choice. We have to go online to carry out activities like what we're doing right now. Yeah. Otherwise, we would be meeting you in a beautiful auditorium in HELP. but instead we're here and we're doing this on MS Teams. And so what is the situation in Malaysia then, right? And this is from a survey that was released over the weekend, conducted by MIER with Vantage. And you'll see that 52% of businesses are planning to change their business model post-COVID. Yeah, so that's more than half of the companies that were surveyed. This was published in the papers, by the way. And close to half are planning greater computerization of processes. And this is in Malaysia, which means that we are not, we are no different from what's happening globally. All businesses are thinking of how are they going to pivot, how are they going to survive this post-COVID, and they're all looking to digital and computerization as a huge part of their strategies moving forward. And from a systems point of view, so I tried to look at how systems thinking can be used to understand this issue further. So if you look at it from a systems point of view, this is kind of like taking a look at it at a more high level view, right? And this is the scenario today. If you look at Malaysian companies and where they are now and where they want to go, at the onset, I guess these are questions we may ask. Do they have the skills for it? Do they have the funding for it? Are they digitally ready? And what about our infrastructure, right? And these are the statistics. From a skills point of view, this is from studies that were conducted by SME Corp and so on. And you see that 65% of SMEs require IT technical skills, which means they don't have it. More than 3/4, they say they need digital marketing skills, which is extremely important in a nation of traders like what Malaysia is, right? And 76% say they need it, right? When you talk about funding, close to half of the SMEs that were in that survey said they view funding as a key challenge for the digitalization. Then you look at readiness. Are they ready? Do they have all the devices and the facilities? Yes, majority, at least from the survey, says they do. 10% have no internet connection, 13% no PC, but that's still, I guess, manageable. We can address that, right? And then we think about infrastructure, right? And I think we all experience this. We experience how suddenly with this crazy rush of everybody going online, we all saw how it was a major strain on the network, and we all are being affected by this. So our infrastructure needs also to be capable. And this is looking at the issue sort of like maybe 20,000 feet, right? But when you use when you use systems thinking, you can go one level down. And when you go one level down, then you start to see how there are so many other interconnected issues. We start from the four, right? So we spoke about infrastructure, readiness, skills, and funding. But if you look at each one of those, they actually have so many other interconnected factors that we need to think about. When you talk about funding, obviously, like now we're hearing about all the stimulus packages, right? So government plays an important role. At the same time, when you talk about funding, there's also the strain between funding businesses versus funding individuals. So the rakyat plays a role. Then when you talk about skills, it's one part is skills in terms of, what's the kind of software, what kind of technologies should you prepare for, and so on and so forth. But the other part is what skills can we harness from the people? Because we know today crowdsourcing or working online, gig economy is another big thing, and that can also help to address the skills requirement of SMEs. Similarly, when you think about digital readiness, it's not just from the industry point of view, but industry will be looking to where the talent is coming from. And so if talent is coming from universities like HELP, are they ready? Have they been exposed to the digital tools? and devices and software and so on and so forth. So each one of this is actually interconnected. And that is why, like at MDEC, sometimes it's hard to explain what MDEC does. MDEC essentially is an industry developer. And why it's hard to sometimes explain what we do is because when you look into our activities, we address many areas. And the reason is because in order to develop industry, you actually start to realize that as you peel the layers, there are so many interconnected factors. You need to drive awareness about even skills, You need to drive policies that support the development of the industry. You need to make sure that people have access to infrastructure and connectivity and so on and so forth. And so that's why sometimes it appears that our scope is extremely broad. And in a way, as you peel the layers and you take a systems thinking approach to it, then you will start to see that it's actually all interconnected towards our role as an industry developer. And so in, now in this period, I mean, one of the things that we've done at MDEC is we've, in the beginning, in the first few weeks of MCO, we launched a campaign called Digital versus COVID. And this campaign is really about helping to provide some information, because we know information is everywhere, and we know Google, of course, is a great source of information. But sometimes just, being in the country and trying to navigate between what's out there and what's not, it can get quite difficult. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to put this on our website, and I've put the URL down there so you can take note of the URL. And if you go into it, we've actually tried to provide resources for what the public will need and what businesses will also need. Yeah. And so just let me give you a flavor of what's on this and what we've tried to do to date. So as I mentioned, this is it's a multi-layered issue, and it's a dynamic issue which affects many different stakeholders and many different factors. So what we've done is we've come up and tried to address it looking at different stakeholders. So for the people, if you go to the link that I showed earlier, you'll see that we've tried to compile all the different e-learning offers that are available right now for Malaysians, be it free platforms or discounted platforms, whether it's for school children or for working adults. You can find a whole range of e-learning solutions there. We've also done campaigns that help children at home to learn coding. So Hour of Code, we've done a Duduk Rumah edition, because you're supposed to stay at home. So, you can't learn coding outside, you learn coding at home. We've introduced other initiatives to help teachers, to help the workforce. We're actively in webinars like this. So again, if you go to the website, you'll see a whole list. We've even organized an online hackathon. Yeah, so these are sort of some of the efforts we've done for the people. For the businesses, because businesses are struggling too, many of them, as you saw the statistics earlier, are not ready in terms of the skill sets, in terms of the funding and so on and so forth. So we've also tried to now bring different parties together to provide business support. So if you go to the Digital versus COVID page that I showed earlier, and if you're a business, you'll actually see all the different solution providers who now have special offers or complementary solutions to support businesses during this MCO period, right? We've also introduced funding mechanisms to help businesses because, they are suddenly, they're cash strapped. So, I'm sure you've all seen the statistics and you've read in the papers. Many SMEs have maybe 1 or 2 months of funding, or maybe, maximum 4 to 6 months. So these are issues that are really pressing. And so some of the teams in MDEC have come up with alternative funding initiatives or matching funding initiatives to support them. We're also helping smaller businesses, especially the micro MNCs, to go digital. So that's the SME digital quick wins and the 100 go digital. This is all about how do we get them on board digital business. Yeah, and we're training them on e-commerce, because again, you saw in the statistic earlier, digital marketing skill is something which many SMEs say they don't have. And so right now, they're all sort of scrambling to get on board e-commerce. So, and then of course, with the community, we also have crowdfunding platform to raise funds for frontliners. So this is our approach. But of course, this is just for the COVID. It's sort of a crisis management situation that we're dealing with. And so this is our response to this crisis. But going back to systems thinking, what I've tried to share is how, sometimes you think it's a simple issue of maybe dealing with 3 or 4 factors, but then when you go into it and you take a deeper view of things, you actually find that there are many interconnected factors. And so these factors have to be addressed as well, which is why in MDEC, we're also interested in things like how do we develop talent, universities like the Premier Digital Tech Universities that help is one of them, of course. How do we help to mold graduates which can support the industry upon graduation so that these industries will be better equipped to face these new digital norms that we are living in. So that's really what I wanted to share today, and I know we have a time limit, and if you have questions, we can take it during the Q&A. With that, thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Sumi.
Let me stop sharing.
Yeah. If you all have any questions, you can post it on the chat and we will address the questions during the Q&A session. Okay. Up next, we have Mr. Chris Chan, who will share with us his experiences as a technology entrepreneur. Over to you, Chris.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Actually, this is the first time I'm doing a webinar, or participating or speaking as one. So just kind of watching my time. I got a problem of over speaking, but I like to look at the perspective of systems thinking from a technopreneur or a technology entrepreneur's perspective. And sometimes in adversity times like this, I'm very glad that I have that ability to almost control my fate. That means, being able to change or steer to the direction that I see most opportunities. And just like what Dr. Sumi had mentioned, things change, and the most important thing is being able to move when there's a need to. Now, what makes an entrepreneur an entrepreneur? I have a picture of the 2 sides of the brain here, right? And really, if you think about it, you can be the creative side, or you could be, that right brain or the left brain where, you're actually very structured and black and white. And the reality of it is you really need to be both, So, sometimes the difficulty of being an entrepreneur is you say, look, you need to have this big vision, this big picture and all of that. But when you do that and you don't have, when it comes to the nuts and bolts and you do not have that talent with you, then you have certain challenges that you face. So we've been doing business for the last 24 years. Joget was a product that one of my teams had developed, right? Originally as an R&D. Today it's 10 years old, right? It's a US company, has its own CEO. But there's a lot of systems thinking, systems approach that we have incorporated into the product itself, right? In terms of building applications for literally anyone and everyone, right? You are going to see that 70–80% of everyone is asking for the same thing. So if you could just take all that perspective, put it in a box and say, look, here, use this box, you'll solve 70–80% of what you need. And you can do it at really, really very quick rather than the long approach. And we took into consideration also the issues that people have when they try to adopt digital technology, right? Example one is talent. You see, I can tell you it takes a long time to be a good software engineer, right? But most of the time when you are building technology or building an application, you do not have time. You want it yesterday, right? So from the experience of developing things for people, we kind of realize that, look, using this 3 or 4 or 5 builders, right? We are now able to put an application together very, very quickly, right? So because of this, and this is 7 iterations, we have managed to get very nice customers across the world, right? And I remember, that thinking approach. The guys were engineers. They are very idealistic. They say, Chris, we don't want to have an office. We don't want to waste time in the KL traffic jam, right? It has to be a US company. And I said, look, it's so unrealistic. And I remember about 5-6 years ago, we were doing a project for a bank, or trying to do a project for a bank. We were pitching for it. And we'll write to the last part. And the director asked this question, where are you guys located? And I remember that point of time I was in San Francisco. So I sent an engineer for that meeting. And that was the big mistake, because the guys just speak their mind, says, oh, we work from home. And obviously what happened is you don't get the project because they think very much of you because you work from home. And guess what's happening today? Everyone is working from home. And I can tell you post-MCO, everyone is going to be still working from home, right? Because that's going to be the way of the future, right? Now, once you have a product, implementation is still very different. So again, where does the systems thinking or the systems approach come in when you actually look at projects? There are projects that are successful, projects that fail, and I've gone through both of them. And let's start with the failure. Many times, you heard of this saying, customer is king. And, we go all out to please the customer. And I can tell you generally, if it's just money that you're looking for, deliver the project, take your money, and thank you very much. Next. The project would be deemed a failure, right? Because, I just give you what you want. I don't really care about what you need, or the value proposition that you propose, you see. But more important is the approach of systems thinking. If I can now look at something in a bigger picture, right? They say that, okay, I can solve this problem for you, but I would think that you would need this as consequence to what I've done. And I have a healthcare use case at the end of this presentation. You have to take care of the low-hanging fruits first. If they say, look, I want to cut down the processes, I want to have a shopping cart, I want to do, a payment gateway, give that to them, right? But in reality, applications, depend on one another, just like what Dr. Sumi had mentioned. There is a bigger picture, right? There is this interconnected world, right? Software don't live in solitary. In enterprise class software, you need to be able to talk to other systems. Just like you think of your single sign-on today, you sign on by Facebook, you sign on with your Gmail, right? Everything is interconnected today. But it does not mean that you just purely look at the world from, just the forest, because you really need to understand the trees as well. You need to go deep. You need to see, oh, okay, really, this is how it works. And, in an organization, and this is the difficult part about being an entrepreneur, you need to have both kinds of people. People that can zoom in, look at the trees, zoom out, look at the forest, right? And when you can do that, the perspective of entrepreneurship change. And I guess that's what kept us going for 24 years right now. I'm as old as MDEC, literally, right? We started in 1996 when we came back from the US. But we were very idealistic guys, right? And sometimes it takes time for people to understand what you are trying to do and do that, you see. But when you have that ability to change and improve, then you actually get that opportunity to thrive as an entrepreneur. So let me take you back to my childhood before I go to my use case. I remember when I was going to primary school, the teacher had asked, what do you want to be, right? You write down your three main goals in life, right? Or what kind of, obviously everybody wanted to be a doctor, right? There was that number one for, I think, half the class. We had quite a few doctors in our class. Right? The second thing I put down was to be an architect. The third thing was to be a musician. And, I went to school, did my degree in music, but then I found out that, look, and I started teaching in Yamaha Music. I was teaching in the US also, in the university, and then I kind of realized there was one problem there. I was exchanging time for money, right? And the more student I taught, the less time I had, right? The money was good, right? But it wasn't very fulfilling. I wanted the money to work for me. As an entrepreneur, you cannot run away. A lot of times one of your motivation it is, for money reasons, right? So, while I was at school, I was also lucky to be exposed to the computers. The Macintosh came up to be. I became an Apple student rep, right? I discovered that, I can now publish music very easily, and I had a lot of opportunities from the music professors that wanted me to look at that. So I said, okay, see, I found another approach, right, to combining the two things that I wanted to do, computers as well as music, right? And that gave me the opportunity to go further. When I came back, I worked for a data warehousing company in the US, and we sort of got introduced to software and what software could do or what data could do. And ultimately what had happened was when you had your own company, I was able to architect my own software. Now, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a software engineer, but I had very good people in the company that helped me build that software. So I fulfilled the second part of my ambition. I'm in the 50s, early 50s, and I call this the last run, right? So I asked myself what I wanted to do, and really the goal was to actually go into healthcare. I was always terrified about blood, so I could never be a good doctor, right? But I thought that it would be nice, since I'm of that age that eventually I would need some lots of healthcare providers. We decided to go into the healthcare, and one of the case study that I want to present, and these are the last two slides, was my opportunity to work with the Malaysian Medical Association. Right, this is a large association. When we started with them, they had about 10,000 members. Right, imagine trying to manage 10,000 members with your Excel spreadsheet. It's a nightmare, right? Collecting their fees and coupled with they're all doctors, right? Doctors sometimes think they are very smart, right? It's not easy to deal with them because they say, look, I'm a doctor. This is my problem. So, it took time to explain to them. It says, look, if you do it this way, you will have this problem. You do it that way, you have this problem. But the very fact that they had issues and they wanted to solve that problem, I said, okay, let me try and solve that problem for you. And we started with simple things like communication, collecting their membership fees. And then, of course, doctors had got insurance. We managed their insurance program for them, right? And then we had this opportunity to manage something called CPD, Continued Professional Development. And we said that, hey, why don't we make it into an app, right? And the doctor said, doctors don't have time, they're too busy with their thing. But we know that the CPD points is mandatory for doctors, right? That means they have to get 20 points every year. If they don't do that, they would not be able to get something called their annual practice certificate. Right? So we said, okay, let's do that. And I remember, during the committee, they had put a target of 30%. So if we have 30% of our members, 4,000 members adopt the app, this will be successful, right? Remember, their membership was about 10,000. There's about 50,000 doctors in Malaysia today. Now, the interesting part today, 2 years later, we have almost 37,000 doctors right now, 35,000 doctors right now. We have about 70% of doctors using the app. right? Their membership have grown. I believe right now it's 14,000 members. So, when you actually expand beyond, the original scope and think of, look, where is their pain point, right? Can I give them a very simple way to be able to look at what events are there, right? Be able to check their points instantaneously, right? Be able to, sign up for a course, get their points, get it reflected instantaneously. People will use the app, right? And right now we've even launched the online learning, right? So that, I don't even have to go for a seminar. Now, of course, people say, yeah, who's going to learn online? I remember many people telling me that way. But guess what? It is very popular, even so today, because there was a need, right? And then more recently in March, this was just before, the MCO and COVID started to get very bad. We had quite a lot of doctors, right? And we said that, look, what were the problems of the general practitioners? So we had, I remember, 400 clinics, and we said let's try to resolve some of the issues by selling them medicine. So we created a B2B platform, right? So you can see very quickly, you start with membership management. Next thing you know, right? Oh, did I get bumped out?
No, you're still on.
You're still on my slides?
Yeah, you're still on.
So anyway, from the B2B platform, we ended up, selling things like face masks to the doctors because, the government had bought 10 million masks from China. There was not a way to be able to deliver to them. And just like my experiences in, exchanging time for money, these are doctors that were very busy with clinics, right? With appointments. Guess what happened during the MCO? The number of patients dropped tremendously, sometimes up to 70%, right? Then you realize, oh gosh, where are the patients gone? And I tell you, people are still falling sick, but they didn't dare go to see the doctor, right? Now, because I had that patients already buying drugs, we plan to launch in May an ability to let patients be able to, let's say, book the appointment or even search the availability of a particular test or vaccine and pay for it online and be able to do that, you see. And you can see how things or the opportunities start to grow when you look beyond just solving what the customer wants. And that's very important as an entrepreneur, you see, being able to look forward, being able to seize an opportunity, and obviously timing is everything, right? And and they look for a different business model rather than someone pay you upfront. Maybe it's per transaction. Someone told me that there are 70 million visits to the GPs every year, right? There are 7,000 clinics, 6,000 private, 1,000 government. So if you could just take 5% of that, make RM1 from it, that's a lot of money, and that can sustain the opportunity. And again, when you look at systems thinking or you look at a system approach to do certain things, especially doing business, then the opportunities open up as you go along, right? So I think my time is up. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Chris.
So how do I get out?
Okay. Right, okay. There's very good view of what the needs are for technopreneurs, and maybe we will have to have more questions later. Boris, are you ready?
Yes, okay. I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this forum. I think I share the same fate as Chris. This is my first time performing in one of these online webinars. And just a quick introduction about myself. So my name is Boris Chitombo, and I am the CTO of Geoview Data Services. Geoview Data Services, we are basically we are a software company that caters mostly to the oil and gas industry, creating customized software for them. So we do everything from the vessel tracking to data management, and currently we're assisting them in their digitalization attempts. So I'd like to go on actually also with now a slightly more detail to what Dr. Sumitra had been talking about. And then I'm also going to go more into detail as to what we in GDS undertook as we migrated into the digital office, so to speak. So, all these global lockdowns, they're really unprecedented. I don't think anyone was fully ready for the extent to which they happened, and also the time which they have actually been all in place. And so everyone having to now suddenly work from home, which, as Chris mentioned, used to be frowned upon, and now it seems to be a staple. As if you work from home, you're the only one who's actually making money. So we're going to look and try and identify what made some of these companies a lot better prepared. So like IT companies, they were already in the cloud. They had most of their infrastructure was already in the cloud, and so they were actually ready, a lot more ready than others per se. The oil and gas industry, they already had to cater for the remote work with their offshore platforms and their supply chain of supplying these platforms and communicating with them. So a lot of them were already ready to, basically they had the infrastructure in place. Banks, they've been pushing us constantly to try and move online and not necessarily come into their offices and disturb them, telling us, if anything, you got online banking, just sign on and you can make all the changes that you need. So what do they all have in common? And so these are some of the questions that in GDS we were asking as we were analyzing, what is it that we need to change within our own systems thinking? And what is it that we, in order for us to successfully submit, to successfully migrate into the cloud? So one thing we notice is they've all got an online presence, and whether it's due to them trying to offer more convenience to clients or improving their own business efficiencies, they developed a hybrid company where part of their business was done online, part of it was done offline. And, most of this year, they got part brick and mortar. Some had to have offices, others just, kept on with having it digital. Now, behind what we see, the online presence, we can see that, they had a strong IT infrastructure. They had clear business processes, clear communication channels, and robust supply chain. So looking at their IT infrastructure, a lot of them we noticed were in the cloud. Now, whether it's because of financial considerations, trying to cost savings, or whether it was part of their disaster recovery plan, they had decided that they needed to be in the cloud. So I'm not going to go into a lot of technical detail as to the cloud architecture. That if you have any questions on that, please feel free to ask it in the chat, and we can address those ones later. But I'll go into the considerations that we in GDS had to go through and had to discuss and work through in order for us to be able to now be a digital office. So the very first step that we took was we talked about communication. Communication is vital for any business. So without good communication, you're not going to be able to effectively get the data or the information that you need across not only to your colleagues, but also to your clients. So in GDS, we decided that we preferred Slack, purely because in Slack, we were able to share code snippets, and we're able to also comment on code snippets and share documents and do full text searches. But all the other offerings, like Microsoft Teams, have also got their own advantages, Skype, even WhatsApp. So one thing that we had to look into was, all right, what do we need? But of course, if someone else is also doing these same considerations, looking at their communication, you have to then think, what is it exactly that do you need? Do you need to have good video conferencing abilities? Then Skype or Microsoft Teams might be something that you would consider. Do you need to share code and have it being able to be searched and commented on, and creating threads on certain code snippets in order for you to better collaborate with your either developers or your other teams? That's when you can then look into what are the exact features that are required by all of the different, which are offered by all of these different applications. The next step I had to look into is the digital business process. How do you digitalize your business processes? There are a lot of businesses, they've already established their way of operating. And you go there, you ask them, you say, all right, why do you do this? And they're like, well, we've always done this. And you have to say, okay, well, now we have to look into this and analyze how exactly is it beneficial? Do you need to put this file into this folder, or is it somewhere that people can actually get more information out of this here? How can we now start digitalizing this, since we've got this restriction in movement? So some of the things, we're a service provider, so we do vessel tracking. And in there we had to then look at our processes and say, all right, well, we cannot digitalize the installations of the units, that the vessel tracking systems that we put on board the vessels, but we can digitalize the way that we invoice and talk and assist our clients in the way they manage their documents. So that's where we had to then, really identify, drill deep into what it is that we do in GDS, what it is that we offer our clients, and how we can then now easier take what it is that we do and digitalize it and make it more cloud-based. Fortunately, since we are a software company, we already had most of our processes in the cloud, so that was not that difficult. Now, the next step is one of the biggest steps that I think any organization can take. This here is trying to figure out the correct architecture, the platform, which of the platforms, because there are so many that are offered now, like Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, Alibaba Cloud. You got so many platforms and they all have many features. Now, how do you know which one is more suitable for what you need, for your needs? So GDS, we looked at it and we said, all right, well, one thing that we need is we need to be able to run serverless code. So just functions run at specific times and without necessarily us having to have the full servers set up in the back end, and we don't want to really have to be dealing with a lot of the hardware. So we said, all right, we need serverless code. We said also we need to go into, we need to have remote databases which can be fast and which are also resilient. So therefore, even if one area goes down, we know that the data will be persisted. And yeah, we also needed something which could provide us with the machine learning capabilities and had many features and services available so that we would be able to actually continue to expand and have enough tools to continue with any of the ideas that we came about. Now, in GES, we're also really fortunate that we got the 2 work-based learning students, and they from Help IT department, and they were very well prepared for cloud migration. They knew a lot about this. I think they cover it in their courses, and they actually had a lot of information on this, and especially on AWS. That's the service that GDS we decided that we're going to use. So we were able to really look into it and drill deep into what it is that we needed in order to set up on AWS, and look at examples of other companies that have managed to do that. For example, you look at Netflix, and their traffic has increased tremendously now with the current situation. I think everyone is enjoying Tiger King, is it? And all the other shows that they've got are currently on board. They're running on AWS, and we took that to heart, saying, well, look, if they can run their software and everything that they need resiliently, reliably on AWS without losing any data and also without losing performance, then with what we need, we will be able to also do the same. So after the architecture, then start looking at the collaboration tools. So these are the tools which will work hand in hand with your architecture. So for example, a lot of companies are working with SAP for their accounting, and with all of our solutions that we're doing in AWS, we're able to interface with SAP. We also have a lot of people using Dropbox. AWS, we're able to write up the services that are able to talk to Dropbox and pull data from Dropbox, push it into our S3 buckets so we can process it, we can do any of the other work that we need to do on it. And so after that, we looked into all of these here, and with this here, we were able to successfully migrate all of our stuff into the cloud, and we're able to create our digital office. Now, I know a lot of people will be thinking, well, especially with this current situation, does this make physical offices obsolete? Now, I'd like to argue that it doesn't, because there's so many things that we gain from physical offices that are missing in the digital offices. There is no way that we can have either one or the other. We will need to always have a hybrid. Certain things, for example, in physical offices, the team building, being able to see your colleagues, being able to feel like you're part of a team when you're in the physical office, as opposed to on the digital office where it requires a high level of discipline. You're having to be working alone at home, even though you're able to communicate with your colleagues. It is a different experience. And I found a lot of people actually then struggle with trying to get that kind of discipline of being able to just sit at home and, not feel alone. Then the other thing is your interpersonal skills that you learn, all the soft skills that you learn inside the offices, as opposed to the hard skills that are required when you're in a digital office. Or the other thing, which is also really big within digital offices, is the communication style. So in digital offices, we have a very direct way of communicating. So you message someone if you want something from them, or if you're needing to, communicate something to them. Whereas in the office, that's where you'll actually meet up around the water cooler, or you'll meet up in the cafeteria, and you can happen to bump into each other and discuss and talk and brainstorm without all of the limitations of, is the person free, is the person available? You can see that they are right there, and that provides a convenience which digital offices do not. But in our current situation, we can see how digital offices now, especially if we're more prepared to be more digital, we're able to actually produce a lot more work. And from that, there, you can see that digital offices now are going to gain a lot more popularity. But I think a lot of companies will need to think about the hybridization, having part off and part online. And so, I think that'll be it from what I need to share. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Right. Thank you, Boris. So we are open now for questions. I think there are some questions that have been addressed online on the chat. And if you have any more questions, you can see them. I think Chris has been addressing the question about how to be an entrepreneur or technopreneur in this time, especially in this time, right? Is it a good time to be a technopreneur?
Usually you don't think too much, you just go ahead and do it, and that's always fine.
Yeah,
I think the biggest problem with a lot of entrepreneurs is sometimes they just think, rethink, and you have this analysis paralysis, right? I mean, you need to find that sweet spot, right, and then just go for it, because the challenge with like you say, like special mindset is actually the other total opposite. You keep looking for, if I do this, too much systems thinking, then this will happen, and if I cannot get this done, then this will happen, and then next thing you know, you don't do anything, right? And basically, we came back in 1996, I remember, right? We didn't like, what was there, right? We were lured by the MSC, right? MSC was trying to be the Silicon Valley in Asia, right? And we just started. We started in a small house. It's sometimes people say perseverance. Sometimes people say, oh, you need to have this talent and all that stuff. But sometimes it's also ignorant. You just don't think about it. You're a bit naive, right? And then you just go out there, and next thing you know, you look back, it's 24 years, right? And you have problems every day. Talent is one issue, right? Money, cash flow, opportunities, customers. You just address it as you go along. But I think, the very important thing is that ability to not just have, remember the left brain, right brain. You need to have different types of people in your organization that have the ability to see different things, right? So the systems approach is very important, but you really need someone that can, go up close with a microscope and, analyze certain things. Right now, when you ask an engineer to go out there and sell your vision of the company, I can tell you they will do a lousy job. So make sure you have the right people to do the right thing, right? Or, you're going to get yourself in a bit of trouble.
Right. All right. Thank you. I have a question for Dr. Sumitra. Are IT jobs still in demand, especially for fresh graduates during the pandemic?
I think that's a good question. I would say yes, it is in demand. But what I would suggest is for fresh graduates to try and get as much practical experience as you can. Because with the current situation, what we may find is people with experience could be in the job market. As in, there could be companies that are downsizing, right, or right-sizing. And so that you may be competing with people who have experience out there. So if you haven't graduated yet, or if you have just graduated, what I would suggest is to try and get some practical experience, even if you have to work for free for a project, a small project or whatever. Just do it, just to get it onto your CV, because that's what companies are looking for. They're looking for people who have real hands-on experience.
Another related question, will it be oversaturated, because this is I think a new student when they graduate around 2 to 4 years?
I don't think so. I think when you say IT jobs, right, they're very, very broad. And so you need to look at what are the areas that are in high demand. If I can suggest, perhaps go look at the LinkedIn's recent Emerging Jobs in Malaysia report 2020, and you'll find that at least 6 out of those 10 top in-demand jobs are actually very, very digital, very, very tech related. And if actually it's 8, yeah, but the other 2 are perhaps sort of partial tech, but 6 are definitely tech. And if you think about where things are going now, roles like cybersecurity, roles like data, right, or even digital marketing, those things are all going to be in very, very high demand because most businesses that are going to be surviving over the next 2 to 4 years are those businesses that are going digital, and they're going to need people like that. So I would say yes, it will still be in demand, if not more in demand. The differentiator though is those who have the practical experience and those who can solve problems, because those are what the skills that companies are looking for are problem solvers, people who are agile, people who can adapt to situations and learn on their feet. That's what they're looking for, rather than sort of a textbook, just kind of all. Yes, CGPAs are very, very important, but that's not the only thing that companies are looking for. They're looking for that little extra. So if you are planning to take IT as a course, do it, but don't just stick to the university curriculum. I would say go for some practical experience as well.
Yeah, let me add to that, Dr. Sumi. Right? I mean, you are right. It's very, very broad-based. And again, many times, by the time they are taught at universities, maybe you don't, they're a little bit outdated. And I tend to sometimes listen to my engineers because they are very idealist people, right? And it's scary. Their thoughts, oh, I'm not going to send my kids to university. I say, what are you talking about, And then they will tell you why, right? I says, look, what are they teaching you in university? You know, by 16, they should know all of that already, right? And I said, what do you mean? And then if you look at things like AI, and machine learning, big data, a lot of it is already out there on the internet, right? So as soon as you get your hands on it, and as soon as, just like what Dr. Sumi had mentioned, you know, if you can actually apply for a project, a real life case project, and understand the value proposition that comes out from it, you know, many things can happen after that. Okay? Right? I'll give you one example of you know, from an entrepreneur's perspective. You know, one of my biggest partners today is actually China. Right? China was growing obviously before the COVID thing, but the folks actually came from the IT team within Bao Steel. Bao Steel is, I think, the 4th largest steel manufacturer in the world. You know, they found Joget, they downloaded it, you know, started building apps from within. But they were brave enough to tell or ask the management to say, look, you know, we want to be entrepreneurs. Can we come up? But can you be my first client? And you know, we'll give you a special price and all these things. And obviously, they were given that chance. And today they are huge, you see? Right? So, you know, many things is taught not in the university, right? It is the opportunity that you get, you know, through relationships like what the university prepare, like for example, this webinar, where you get MDEC, you know, industry folks that can say, okay, you know, I've got this need, can you help me solve this problem or not? And that creates that job opportunity that we need to go for. Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree. I'd also like to just add on that, is that look at what Help is offering right now with the work-based learning. That is something which definitely is allowing the students to be able to come into the industry, experience what the industry requires, get trained up. So, for example, you know, we had to train our work-based learning students all about test-driven development, doing unit testing, giving them a practical experience to what exactly they need in order for them to be able to work in the industry. And that is something that, you know, is going to be very useful. And so, like, you know, you're asking, how do you collaborate in projects? How do you gain experiences? If you're in a work-based learning program, you will be, by default, gaining a lot of work experience as well. And with industry companies where you're going to be gaining from what they require, so you'll be better suited, better fit, you know, later on once you've completed your studies.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. I think we are running out of time, so I will have to thank the speakers for their very, very good sharing sessions today. And I hope that everybody has had a good experience also. So before we leave, I would just like to ask everyone to share their feedback on the forum by completing this evaluation. And you can continue to post questions, I think, on the chat. It will remain. And please let us know if we can help you in any way through this evaluation. So thank you very much, everybody. And we hope to be able to see you in future events.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.